Welcome back to Incremental, the continuous improvement podcast. This is our practice edition where we talk about lean improvements we made in the shop throughout the week and tie them back to lean principles. I am Uriel Eisen from Austere Manufacturing.
And I am Devin Bedoni of Like and Precision.
And you got a quote for us.
Leadership can be learned. No, strike that. Leadership must be learned from Designing the Future.
Yeah.
I think it's good. I think there's the idea that people are natural leaders, which, I'm sure there are people that naturally come to it. But I think anybody who approaches a leadership role without thinking they need to learn a lot more is probably in for some, or the people below them are in for some unpleasant surprises.
Yeah, I think this about everything. Like, I remember the first time I threw a punch, like, on a punching bag. Like, I'd been sort of getting into MMA.
Ow.
And you throw up. No, it was just so awkward. It didn't feel natural at all.
Interesting.
Like, I didn't feel, like, in the dreams where you, like, can't run. It felt like that. But you're trying to generate power and you're, like, not.
Interesting.
And it's learned, and I feel like the perception is that it's, like, instinctual, and so there's some shame in not being able to do it or any other skill. Similar leadership, yeah.
Yeah. That's not what happened to me, but it also wasn't pleasant.
That's funny.
I like to box a lot in high school with my friends.
Same.
Which is pretty fun.
Yeah.
Also, until you get knocked out.
Yes.
Or until you knock your friend out.
Yes.
Like, maybe not what we should be doing.
Totally.
Anyway, that's an aside.
That's what jiu-jitsu is for.
Not knocking each other out. Just
but still the fun.
Ripping their
No, very low injuries if people are good. Anyway.
They're good.
No, like beginners are dangerous.
Yeah.
Similarly, beginner leaders are dangerous.
Yes.
And you need to train.
Yeah.
Yeah, it's funny. But also very real. I don't know what resources. I'm sure there's a lot. But if anyone has recommendations, I'd love to. A good books or anything else for things you wish you had read before anyway, as we look to grow the team.
I think the Toyota way kind of gives a lot of like good philosophical ideological background for like the underpinnings of a company, but not really the nuts and bolts of like how you deal with the day-to-day.
For sure.
Actually interacting with people. I think I'm sort of just on the verge of having to really tackle this in earnest as our team starts to grow beyond what just feels like kind of some friends hanging out and doing work.
Right.
And it's not, I don't anticipate it being easy. I was talking with a friend the other day, talking about, having to learn to be a manager and how that's like kind of a cool challenge and interesting. And she was like, yeah, it definitely is a challenge. Like, she was like, I think I've done okay. Definitely a few people I've alienated completely, but I don't think it was entirely my fault. And I was like, yeah, I guess that's like, that's a reality that a lot of people face as businesses grow or you're in an organization that you are just a manager in and don't actually have like the wherewithal to make big structural changes or just dealing with personalities that like you might not have hired this person. You might not have made that choice.
Right.
But there's someone you have to interface with and you're not going to fire them. It's like figure out how to make this work effectively kind of a thing. I don't know.
Yeah.
A lot of challenges.
My grandmother, who's a very interesting lady, said something to me years ago that stuck in my head. I think I was like fighting with my parents. I was pretty young. And then I walked into the other room and she was like, Uriel, dealing with things is easy. Dealing with people is hard. And she was right.
Yeah.
So I feel like most of this podcast is about we've mostly been focused on the things.
Yes, I'd say that's true.
Even though a lot of lean is about growing people.
Mm-hmm. Maybe almost exclusively when you get into the...
Yes.
Yeah.
Yeah. Building a learning organization is about the people doing the learning.
Yeah.
Want to jump into some improvements?
Yeah. Let's stop talking about people before.
Yeah. Let's talk about things.
Yeah, why don't you lead us off? You've got a longer list. Cool stuff.
Yeah, so the biggest one, the coolest one, I've been improving how to manage batches through the oven.
Uh-huh.
Sorry for using the B word on this podcast. And it was it's interesting just like where to put the timers so it's clear what's what. Now there's an issue where if you miss the timer going off and you come back, it's it resets. So then you can have like two timers that just say like 2 hours. And you're like, well, which one? So that's the next thing to tackle. But just to optimize throughput, figuring out the timing and where things go to sit in different stages and stuff like that. It made me think a lot about like Shigeo Shingo talking about operations and process, and how people conflate, or that for 100 years process was thought to be a stack of operations. Yeah. But really it's not just a series of operations. It is something else, and that you should improve the process rather than improving the operations. And I feel like the last couple weeks have been a lot of that, which is very cool. You don't have to buy anything. You don't have to change what tools you have. And in fact, that's the easy part that is often not nearly as impactful. Yeah. And so it was fun to actually dig into some we need to adjust how we're approaching this. It has nothing to do with the tools we have or anything else. It's just, and there's a lot of that. We also have, which I haven't tackled yet, so maybe I shouldn't talk about it on this episode. Our assembly station, there's a lot of ambiguity about what is where. And I think we just need labels and designated areas. So it's just clear.
Nice. I guess we kind of went over this last episode, but made that responsibilities and prioritization rubric. Yeah. I think that was kind of one of the big things for this last week.
That's cool.
I'm trying to figure out how to, really it's about giving people the tools to do their own analysis in the moment of where they need to be.
Right.
So there's not ambiguity. So it's like putting...
Is that the ninth lean waste? Ambiguity? Confusion?
We have 40 ninth lean waste.
Yeah, that's true.
I guess in concept, putting priority labels on everything in the shop, but it's sort of tuned to each person.
Right.
It's the idea.
Yeah, that's cool.
Yeah.
And interesting. I'm thinking it would be extremely cool if that then turned into a tool where each person can learn and refine and feed back
into their list,
learning sort of
their own priority list?
I don't know. I think struggling with the issue of do you have a learning organization? I feel like I instigate a lot of improvements still. Yeah. And I've been speaking of management, thinking about how to, what I need to do differently. Be asking more questions instead of supplying more answers. Which is really hard. Anyway, that's a cool one.
Which is funny. You think it'd be the other way. But.
Yeah. It's easier. Yeah. Yeah. Jump in with, I'm smart. Let's see. Oh yeah. So I've been focused on, I've been doing a lot more paint, unfortunately. Yeah. 4 or 5 hours a day instead of 1 hour a day. Oh. Yeah, exactly. So this is a twofer. I got a PAPR, which is a positive pressure helmet kind of thing. So rather than a respirator, it pushes air. So even if I was noticing if I turned my head or or looked down, it would sort of open up a small gap. If I wasn't clean shaven, which
gap in your respirator.
Yeah. And so you'd get a little whiff of paint, and that stuff is just nasty. And I'm I don't want to sacrifice my health for this endeavor at all. Yeah. So yeah, it was very expensive. It was $1,800. Oh, yeah. Why I haven't bought it.
That hurts.
Yeah. But then finally so this is funny. I decided I would get one. Yeah. because I was like, okay, again, don't want to sacrifice my health. Health is important. It will be a real bummer if later in life I suddenly can't breathe or whatever, or get cancer.
Yeah.
And so anyway, pulled the trigger on that. And then the next day I went into the shop, and of course it hadn't shipped yet. And I was like, I'm not painting today. I'm waiting for this thing to arrive. So I didn't touch the paint. But the other improvement was I just made a garbage bag, like cut a garbage bag to fit the opening of the paint booth, because the paint booth has residual paint and stuff in it.
Yeah.
To seal it off. I mean, it's not a perfect seal, but it's way better to seal it off when we're not using it. Because it's not like a separate room. And I think even when you turn off the fan, or I should say when you turn off the fan, I suspect as like air flows over the roof of the building and stuff, you could get backdrafts through there.
Yep.
So this is not a perfect solution, but I will say in two dismaying turns of events, after making these two improvements, it smells way less upstairs, which you kind of then realize how much you were smelling it before. Similar with the PAPR.
Yeah.
I'm painting and you like can't smell anything and it's notable, and I'm like, yikes.
Yeah.
Anyway, those are good. Health is important. I also talked to we've had a few extra people in the shop lately, but just like that safety is really easy to push down the road, especially with like hearing loss and just like fumes.
Yeah.
Because there's never gonna be a moment where it's like, now I can't hear.
Yeah, it's not
it's
like
very slow.
You dropped something heavy on Bob and Bob is broken
Bob
now.
is mush.
It's just like over 20 years, all of a sudden your life goes bad.
Yeah, or you have like severe respiratory issues or whatever. So I don't know. I want to take these things more seriously. Not that we're not, but just like a redoubling of emphasis on taking care of ourselves in the shop.
Yeah, it's important. And as you said, easy to kind of brush over.
Yeah.
So we printed out our tool/bin tags for our tool organization scheme.
Oh, cool.
And started actually reorganizing the storage of our tools. It's a project, so it's still kind of mid process.
That's the worst.
Yes. Yes, it is.
We're there with our Kanban.
Yeah. We opted to use the same exact tag, like the same exact printout for the bin and for the tool tag.
Smart.
So that you can just like match. And I didn't really come up with this, but Ariel was basically like, well, all of the critical information that you need is on the tool tag because that's where you need to see it. So it's all the same stuff here. We can always add to it if we needed to. And then one other kind of cool fallout or knock-on effect was so we use like a Lista or style cabinet. It's like a knockoff brand. They have like a grid spacing, and then you can buy those shallow bins, which are designed to fit within that grid spacing. So that's kind of what we've been that's what we've been using for the last 2 or 3 years.
Yeah.
So we just have the like long ways or the dividers running away from you, but then it was just open between that, and we would just put the bins in as needed for different sizes. Yeah. We decided to stop using them and use the built-in dividers instead. And I think it's been a good move. Kind of a couple different things. One is I hadn't quite recognized how much physical space those bins took up.
Oh, funny. Right. It's like a 16th here and a 16th there, but then you have 30 of them in a row.
Yeah. And it was kind of surprising how often there would be a scenario where we would like the tools would be sort of like spilling out of the bin, but going to the next size bin up wasn't really a workable option.
And the built-in dividers
have quite a bit more width.
Okay.
Because there's not the actual, they have some slop, and then there's the actual material of the bin.
Right.
And then same for length.
And you can just increment them.
And you can increment them easier. And then the other thing was that the top of them has a little kick on the divider. for putting a tag on for our label so you can read it easier.
So it's almost like they solved this problem.
It's almost like they solved this problem.
That's cool.
So yeah, I was kind of excited about how that's going to all work out. And it was interesting in doing it, discovered that in my naming of tools, I'd like missed a whole range of numbers, which was kind of funny, but now we can see that the range is missing and we can fill it in as needed.
Interesting.
Which I probably would have never noticed if it hadn't been laid out physically.
So remind me, so the scheme you're putting in place is basically every tool has a number.
Every tool, what you would call a rotating tool assembly.
Okay. Has its own number.
Has its own number. Yeah.
And then how do you then go get like a 1/4 inch end mill for that assembly?
So that 1/4 inch end mill is in a bin that has that same number.
And those numbers are like incremented, or those numbers are just like over here we have 1/4 inch, over here we have 3/8.
No. So this was a sticking point initially. Okay. The numbers are more or less random.
Okay.
So you'll have an 1/8 inch ball end, and then right next to it you'll have a 1/2 inch extended length reduced neck, and then after that you'll have a chamfer mill, and after that you'll have a whatever. Right. So initially there was definitely some pushback of being like, well,
and so it's just by number.
It's just by number. Yeah.
So to find the number you want, you just go like, I'm in the 400s. Here is 417.
Yeah.
Bam.
Yeah. The pushback was like, well, what if we're out of this tool and you need another 3/8?
Check the spreadsheet.
Yeah. It's basically like check the spreadsheet. Also, we're not trying to optimize for that scenario where we run out of tools.
We messed up.
Yeah, we're trying to optimize for having tools. So
if
it's really a pain in the butt when we run out of tools, we're going to learn how to not run out of tools.
Yep. That is fair.
Yeah, the one downside is you do sort of need a spreadsheet reference. Yeah. Potentially, but also not, because like we were saying, the other information is printed on the tag. So it'll be like whatever, a 52-0265.
Mm-hmm.
And then below that it'll say whatever, 1/4 inch 3 flute.
Okay.
Whatever, 30 thou corner rad or something. So there is some like human readable information there.
Mm-hmm.
But when initially searching, you're just searching for the number.
Gotcha.
And you can use that information to just double check.
As we said, this system seems less easy to use in a good way, where it's like you can't fudge it.
You can't fudge it. Yeah. I think it's actually going to be easier to use on the daily.
Yeah.
When all the pieces are in place.
I bet it will be. It's just like very formulaic, and there's no reason to break the system because you can't. Like, you have to check the spreadsheet. You have to put the thing in the bin where it belongs. Otherwise, someone won't be able to find it.
Yeah.
Like, it's less tolerant of
cheating,
goofing around. Yeah. Which seems like a win.
I think it's going to be good. And I think like the end goal is like a computer at that station. Like the end goal is we're going to do all of our prep work for a job setup at our tool station, not at a machine. So the end goal is we'll have a computer right there. You pull up your list, you go to the assembled stuff, you grab it. And if it's not there, then you assemble it from holders that have IDs and tools that come out of an ID bin. And you're looking at a number, you're looking at a list of IDs. And so it's like, this one's a 206. Go grab the 206, put it in the holder that it says.
I wonder if there's any way to eliminate the need to go check what is assembled and then create the ones that aren't.
Yeah.
That seems a little annoying, but maybe not, because like visually you know sort of what you're looking for.
Well, those are also going to be numbered.
Oh, and in order. Oh, so you're just like, bam, nice. That makes a lot of sense.
Yeah.
Right.
Yeah. And not like we're not going to have a pocket for every tool ID on the rack.
That dovetail concept.
Yeah. Which we still have not built.
Sure.
But, yeah. The standard versus non-standard is kind of there to deal with that, but it's not 100%. So it still will be like a check and then assemble what's not there.
Right. Very cool.
Anyhow, that was a long-winded.
That's awesome.
Yeah.
That's a big big improvement.
A big start.
Yes. Let's see. I've been working on throughput on our oven. So to continue that, making more racks for our racks.
Racks for your racks. Racks on racks on racks.
Basically. So you load all the painted parts into this rack and then slide the whole thing into the oven. Has pros and cons.
What was the old style? You were like hanging racks that would go on.
Yeah. They were hanging, and then there was just like bars in the top of the oven that you could hang stuff from. Yeah. It was problematic in more substantial ways. The current issue I'm dealing with is there's sort of like, I don't know if there's more over processing. The real issues that I'm dealing with are one of our racks that I built a bunch of. This is the ones that used to hang in the oven. I just like cut the hook off and now lay that down into these like fingers on a pan, almost like a taco, like those taco stands that you rest tacos in, sort of like that. And they're slightly too wide for the oven, so they can only go in on one shelf that doesn't. Anyway. So that's sort of logistically difficult. But I've been making more racks so that anytime I'm ready to paint, like whatever I need to paint next, I have an available sort of pan that holds that type of rack. So I've been building more racks and more racks. And that's been alleviating the sort of, pinch point of like, I need to paint this part, but I don't have all the right bits and I have to wait for that thing to come out of the oven. Yeah. I actually just ran into that right before this podcast, so I need to build I think 1 or 2 more, but I'm also kind of not trying to invest a huge amount of effort into this because I really want to get the robot. And
it's not there's that, and it's not a place where you could be like having your standard kind of sequence so that you knew you always had one of the right ones available.
I think there's some merit to that. I have to check because as I said, like one of the parts can sort of only fit on one shelf. And so if I paint parts, I like to load the oven from top to bottom so that you're never sliding something in over wet paint. So like dust falls in theory. Now that I'm saying that, I think I have the fan, the air is injected in the bottom of the oven and pulled out of the top rather than the other way around. I wonder if I should reverse that blower. I probably won't, but maybe I should.
Interesting.
Anyway, that's how I do it. And so I think I need to paint like belt buckles, batch 1, belt buckles, batch 2, and then like either cam or ladder locks for our third batch. And then keep on that. But that assumes that particular ratio, which I know is going to switch soon.
Interesting. We, again, on the tool management side, had our post processor updated for better readability.
Very cool.
And to have more of the better readability of the tool header. So we rely pretty heavily on the tool output from
that's awesome
cam. So with this ID change, and wanting to have the tool holder definition in there, since that's part of the definition,
right?
It was stretching out. Then like lines were stretching out to a point where the CNC wouldn't receive it because there's like a maximum line length that the control will take.
So you alternate or something?
No, we just took a bunch of junk out of it, basically.
Didn't realize that was an option. What was in there? Just whatever default stuff was in there?
I had messed around with it. So like most of it was stuff I had personally done. So I had like an ID and then the ID number. So it would like say ID and then the ID number. And then it would say name and then it would say what the name was. And then it would say this.
I see the logic.
Yeah.
So just took all that out.
Took most of that out and then we added in the tool holder stuff. So now there's an ID and then a description. And then we wanted to add in the stick out as well, or we had the stick out in there, but again, it was like fully written out. So and there was a little back and forth with like things that you wouldn't think actually take up extra room. But so instead of being like I did like S.O for stick out space the number.
Uh-huh.
A period takes up as much room as nothing. Or sorry, a period takes up as much room as a letter in terms of the control, even though we don't think about it that way.
Right.
So we ended up shortening that, just making it like an equal sign and condensing it all. Sorry, where am I going with this? The critical thing was that our ID number for our tools right now is like a two-digit number that describes the holder, and then a 4-digit number that describes the tool.
Okay.
So I'd updated that, but then there was nowhere for a person setting up a machine to go see what that 2-digit number that describes the holder is.
Yeah.
At present, I think we will eventually have that.
Okay.
But I wanted to have a description in the header as well. So now it gives the holder digit, ID, and then a very succinct description of what that holder should be.
Interesting. And I guess like this makes me think about like, you know, how in the weeds should this podcast get? But I think like something worth pointing out is kind of the theory is cool, but like this is where people are actually going to benefit from any efficiency gains is like, is it easy to read? Does it automatically output? Is there confusion? Is it, just like all the tiny little stuff,
absolutely.
And it really just smooths out the whole day. So like, I don't know. We've talked about this before, but like that kind of thing does not get a lot of engagement on social media or just generally like at a dinner party. If you were like, you know, waxing poetic about your
what you've been working on lately. Well, let me tell you about it.
Yeah, buckle up. Yeah, but I think the problem with that is that it sort of de-emphasizes the importance of those small things, but they're like so crucial. I don't know.
Yeah, no, 100%. This is like definitely at the root of us being able to effectively set up jobs in a quick manner.
Right. Without like talking to each other. And
and this came directly out as like, I was like, okay, we're going to come up with this new cool system. And Ariel was like, what do these numbers mean? How am I supposed to know what this means? And I was like, that's a very good point that you make. You know, sometime there's going to be a list somewhere. She was like, great.
How about now?
How about now? How about we make this information available where it needs to be seen? Yeah. Not
critical.
Not super
critical,
fun.
Not celebrated. And also very boring. So I don't know how to, you know, get around the fact that no one's talking about it because it is just inherently tedious and boring.
No
offense.
No. Yeah, you're trying to smooth out things. You're trying to make tedious, boring things less tedious and boring.
By taking the time to get into the minutia and it's tricky. I added some. Okay, we're having issues with. We've really in getting tighter, like smaller batches and tighter flow, where it's like, if this thing isn't done and we hand it to the next station and they reject it, now we're down for 20 minutes, or delayed for 20 minutes. So we're getting an issue with sandblasting where the bigger parts aren't tumbling as much, and so they're not like all the sides aren't getting exposed. So we kept pulling ones out that like one side would be shiny still, and I'd have to go back in. So then we started sort of unloading, like shuffling it manually halfway through the cycle, which was pretty annoying. So I 3D printed these blocks to put on the bottom to try to sort of like keep them from settling. It was mostly them settling on the bottom of the basket and just like riding that around in a circle. And so I added these blocks to make them, to tumble them more.
Like in a washing machine or a dryer.
And so that has worked largely. Unfortunately, the spacing between two of them seems to be like perfect for one of the parts to just jam. So it's been way better, but every now and then you come in and there's like two jammed in there. And so I have to change that. But it's,
That's amazing.
It's always something. I have to say, okay, I posted about this on Instagram, but today, or every single day, something goes wrong, like without fail. And I always remind myself that like every time we solve a big problem, we are pulling ahead of like other people who want to do the same thing,
Uh-huh.
right? Like you have to solve all these problems, but even once you've solved them, they don't stay solved, right? Like your machine runs well, and then you're like, great, we did that, and then it finds a new way to go wrong, and it is just so impressive to me more and more. Like picking up, okay, we make it sounds absurd to even say, we make like what is essentially a 5-component assembly.
Yeah.
And we just have endless issues, endless problems, like endless new ways of making a reject. And then you look at like a car, or even like the other day I was taking apart a toaster oven to try to fix it.
Yeah.
And it's like, wow, this is a huge sheet metal part that has like a big stamping that has like radiuses everywhere.
Yeah.
And then you look at the front of it and like the gaps are pretty dang consistent, and like just everything is there, and like you don't open it up and like they forgot 5 screws, or like it's just so impressive to me, the quality of consumer goods.
Yeah.
Like it's just amazing. And like you make stuff, and there's just, so we had like the bobbin, the hook in the sewing machine. It turns out Sam came upstairs and was like having an issue. Turns out like the bobbin, the hook that pulls the loop around the bobbin had a tiny burr on it. You couldn't even see it, you could just feel it. And so I had to like come downstairs, and like, I mean, I didn't know it was that immediately, so I'm like, I figured it was a burr somewhere, so I started taking the thing apart, finally found that, polished it, put it back together. He had spent like 20 minutes trying to get it to sew nicely, and just like it just like messes up your whole production flow.
Yeah.
And you just think about like a company making, I don't know, anything more complex. It's just so amazing.
It is pretty mind-boggling. Yeah.
That's all. Rant over.
That is all. Good job, you all.
Yes. Yeah, exactly.
Note our impressedness.
Yeah.
Let's see here. I officially made the switch to programming in Fusion.
I do know this. I got a dismayed phone call yesterday.
A couple people who listen to this podcast, I think, got some phone calls yesterday.
Congratulations.
Yeah, I think it's going to be good.
Nice.
It was one of those days where I was like, the part I need to program right now does not have to be done today. So I guess today is the day.
Ouch. Yep.
Yeah, but I can say that if I wasn't trying to make our programming system easily accessible to many people, I probably wouldn't be doing this switch. But I think it's going to be good for the organization as a whole.
Interesting.
Personally, I would not choose to make this switch.
Yeah.
As a organization, I think it's a very good move.
Gotcha.
Yeah.
Well, that's good. Good of you to recognize, I guess.
Yeah, apparently.
I mean, that you needed to do it.
Yeah.
Or think you need to do it anyway.
Well, the organization definitely does.
Right.
And then I think, yeah. And then
you being able to help people with that tool.
Yeah. Or even just
useful.
have like single point of truth. Like for the last 3 weeks, we've had like 2 tool libraries we've been having to like leapfrog each other. And it's like, this is not good.
No.
This is very bad, actually.
Yeah, there's a few annoying things in Fusion. I mean, it's been years since I've used SolidWorks. There's definitely some things in Fusion that are pretty annoying.
Yeah.
That's probably true the other direction too, maybe, but
probably. Yeah, I've heard people say they prefer. Yeah.
Anyway,
SolidWorks is highly optimized at this point for what it does well.
Yeah, and if anyone from Fusion is listening, there's some tools in there that, in my opinion, try to be smart for you, and it's like, I don't like the constraints. I don't understand the mental model. Like
the joints, you mean?
The joints, yeah.
Yeah.
I really prefer the
SolidWorks version.
Yeah, where it's like, I will constrain these faces, and now constrain it to be concentric, and now constrain it on this axis, and it's like, I know exactly what each constraint does.
It's much more intuitive to how you would actually do it in physical space with real things.
Yeah, maybe there's a counter argument. Maybe there's people who disagree. Probably. Anyway,
there's probably a patent.
And whoever coded it, probably a patent, could be. Nice. I have. So we finally figured out a way to tumble the lock bar and get it deburred satisfactorily.
Yeah.
I bought more aggressive media that is not like okay, when you go read literature, it's like, what material are you doing? And then it will sort of give you different media. This is media that's intended for much harder materials. So I think it's just a lot more aggressive.
Yeah.
We don't have tight dimensional constraints that we are worried about. We're just like, make this softer and nicer.
Yeah.
So I went for some like much more aggressive media, and we're tumbling for, I think 6 hours at this point, which is a lot longer than we've been doing. We were at like 2 hours mostly. So one day I just was like, all right, I'm just going to run this till it looks good and figure out what that is. And so we have a recipe, which is a huge relief. So now we just need to take off the little thing. Like there's a little nib.
Where it starts and finishes the cut? No,
we've been batching them into like these. It's too small for water jet or laser cutters. It causes issues in the machines.
Yeah.
Where, unless you come up with clever workarounds, which most services are not really interested for the number of pieces.
So if it's not water jet or laser, what are they doing?
So it is. It's just done into a whole bunch, and they're tabbed together.
Oh, yeah.
So then where the tabs are, there's a little bump, so we need to file that off, and then they go into the tumbler. But that is so much faster than hand deburring all facets.
Yeah.
By about a mile. So that is a huge relief. What do you think of this idea? I was kind of thinking about maybe getting a stamp made and then just stamping these in-house. I don't think the tonnage would be high. Like, I bet I have a press that would do them, and then we could just do them to order.
I don't know. I have zero experience with stamping of any kind.
What do you think just generally about the premise? Because there's also companies that do stampings all day long. It just seems like not many people are like SMED, so they would not be that interested in an order of like 500. Yeah. I shouldn't say that. I'm going to pay them for a long setup to do 500.
Yeah.
And then there's another option of going overseas, which a bunch of people have recommended. I'm trying to keep this in the US. Yeah. So I just thought, like, it's a very simple part. I wonder about just getting a tool made.
I mean, it seems like, if it could be safe and takes 10 seconds per assembly, and like the feedstock's all there, and you just and put it in your part, would you still have to tumble? Or
I think I would. There wouldn't be removing the little tabs. But I could just run like a batch of 100 a day or whatever, and not have to hold a lot of inventory.
Yeah, I don't know. I think if you're not actually, I mean, I guess you could just make it one of your same. But it seems like if it's not automated, it's going to be hard to compete.
Oh no, they're very easy to automate.
Yeah,
you just feed in a ribbon,
right,
and then it pulls in the next. Like, these feeders are off the shelf parts.
Yeah,
I don't know.
Maybe.
Or do you think I could put the punch on a tool changer on a BT30?
No, I don't think so. I think if you could figure out a way to get it clean enough, that you could stamp to assemble, that would be pretty cool.
That would be very cool. I can't imagine a scenario where that would be the case, but no sense in writing it off. Because I need both sides to be somewhat smooth, but maybe there's a way. If you know of a way to do this, please write in.
Yeah. Let's solve Uriel's problems for him.
Yeah. And then lastly, I have I struggle with, this is me opening up in a public forum. I struggle with fine dust in the shop. Tracked in we have like crushed gravel outside the shop.
Yeah.
Which is quite annoying. The longer term solution is probably putting down pavers or something, but in the meantime, we got a backpack vacuum from Makita. I want to say, not Makita.
Yeah.
What's the red one?
Milwaukee.
Milwaukee. So we got their backpack vacuum, which people seem to love. The filter loads up so fast with fine dust that you had to sort of like by the end of vacuuming our very small shop. Granted, it's fairly dusty.
Yeah.
With like fine dust, it would load up and you'd lose suction. And so every time you'd have to sort of like bang out this pancake filter thing. Very annoying. So I got a Dyson, and they're pretty cheap on eBay.
Dyson, just what style of vacuum?
It's like a portable battery powered vacuum. Very small. The whole point of those things is that it uses like cyclonic separation.
Oh.
So there's no bag and there's no filter. And so, yeah, it's amazing.
It works?
It works so well. So well.
Interesting.
They have a HEPA variant, which has a HEPA filter tacked on the back.
Yeah.
I'm not sure that this is the case, but I saw an interview with, I'm forgetting his name, the inventor of Dyson. Damn. Anyway, cool guy. There's some very cool interviews with him.
Huh.
But he was talking about like the physics of the particles of the different sizes and how fast they're going. Because they basically, the big innovation is to make tiny, tiny cyclones. And so your RPM, like the acceleration of the air is massive.
Yeah.
Because it's a very tight circle and it's spinning very fast. He's basically saying it filters down to the particle size of HEPA. But I have a sneaking suspicion that what was happening is customers were like, hey, does this have a HEPA filter? And they're like, no. And so finally they're like, okay, fine. Yes, here, have a HEPA filter. But I did a lot of vacuuming with it and I checked the filter because I got one off eBay with a filter.
Yeah.
Didn't see anything in it.
Interesting.
Done a lot of vacuuming. It is really awesome.
But like, obviously there's a thing that's filling up with stuff.
Yeah. It's very small and you dump it out and it's super quick and then you keep vacuuming. And then they sell adapters to go from to convert it from the Dyson battery to, I switched it to the Makita batteries we use around the shop.
Yeah.
So they're much higher amp hours for a much lower cost and they're now they're interchangeable, whereas the built-in one is not.
Yeah.
And so, yeah, it's awesome.
Cool.
So now I'm going to have them at the different stations so that everyone can just do a little vacuuming very easily. And it's not like a big setup, get on a backpack, go do some. Anyway, I'm excited about that.
Yeah. The outdoor thing is like the outdoor environment. It's kind of amazing how much it affects.
Yeah.
Our new shop is in a paved area. Granted, it's a lot bigger, so there's a lot more room for the stuff to spread out. But like our old shop would get dirty fast.
Right.
And I think we've swept twice.
Wow.
Since we've moved to the new shop. Granted, it takes a long time to sweep, but it's notable how much cleaner the floor stays.
Yeah, it's wild. I mean, we just see it even like on a day when it rains, so people's shoes get wet and then you get so much stuff in the shop.
Yeah,
it's a bummer. Anyway,
wild.
Thanks all for listening.
Yes, indeed.
Again, we have a Patreon. Go check it out. If you get value from the podcast, consider joining the Patreon. And if you're already a member of the Patreon, we appreciate it. And to all of the other listeners, we appreciate you too. And appreciate the feedback on the podcast. It is really a fun part of doing this.
Yes, indeed. We have an Instagram account, Incremental CI. You can find me at lichen_MFG on Instagram and likenprecision.com on the internet.
And you can find me at austeuremfg.com on the internet and austere_manufacturing on Instagram. Till next week.
Adios.